It breaks my heart. I am so proud of the girls. There are a handful of girls now who are suing their state's attorney general and the high school sports governing body that has allowed this to happen because of their discriminatory policies that exclude women from the women's category. Cannot believe this is happening.
Yeah, I have never seen an organization more committed to self-imploding than the WNBA. A few weeks ago, I made this video highlighting how it appears Brittany Griner said bleep white girl after fouling out in a game against Indiana Fever, the team that Caitlin Clark plays for. Some people like Jamel Hill, former ESPN host, says that no, she didn't say bleep white girl. She says bleep whack call, to which she then went on to call me a grifter for even pointing this out, but besides the point. You can watch and make up your own mind as to what it appears
Alright, get ready, because Riley Gaines just detonated a truth bomb on Brittany Griner and the entire WNBA establishment. After Griner's recent, highly controversial comments about Caitlin Clark seemingly got swept under the rug, this former Olympic swimmer, who's no stranger to fighting for fairness, stepped up and vocalized exactly what so many of us were thinking. She held absolutely nothing back, and now the league is in a full-blown scramble to contain the fallout. This begs the question, was Riley Gaines totally justified in calling out both Brittany Griner and the WNBA's glaring double standards? Or should she have just steered clear of this basketball drama? Honestly, the WNBA has truly perfected the art of self-sabotage. You might remember a few weeks back, video surfaced of what many people believe showed Brittany Griner saying some pretty inflammatory things about Caitlin Clark right after fouling out of a game against the Indiana Fever, while some eager apologists tried to spin it, claiming Griner was actually talking about a referee's call. The timing and her unmistakable body language painted a completely different picture. And then of course, Fox News had to jump in, asking, hey,
never seen this lady a day in my life. Why'd y'all hire this woman?
The USA basketball chair actually said it would be irresponsible to put Caitlin Clark on the U.S. women's Olympic basketball team, all while putting Brittany Griner on the team. I think with the extreme controversy that she brings.
Let me jump in, Riley, because you say it a lot there. I'm not sure what you mean by the controversy that Brittany Griner brings to the game. I mean, that's kind of not fair to say without explanation.
Well, I mean, I think given everything that happened overseas, given that she was put in jail, I mean, the controversy is certainly there, whether we want it there or not.
Not her fault and wrongly accused. Let's be fair. That's Riley. I like you a lot too. That's not right. She was wrongfully accused. That is not fair to bring that up. So we're gonna delete that. Okay, let's you and I continue.
She literally tried to tell Riley Gaines that Brittany Griner was unlawfully detained. What are you saying? Fox.
When the call came to get this lady off your show, Riley Gaines was absolutely not about to let any of this slide. As the mainstream sports media started twisting themselves into pretzels, attempting to spin this story into something it wasn't, Gaines stepped forward and dropped a reality check so potent it's got the entire league quaking in their designer sneakers. What makes this whole situation so incredibly explosive is that Gaines isn't just a random commentator. She's speaking from a position of undeniable moral authority that you simply can't brush aside. This is a woman who has lived through the trenches of unfair treatment in sports firsthand. She's the swimmer who bravely competed against biological males in women's competitions, and then found the courage to speak out when others chose silence. Gaines intimately understands what it feels like to be savaged for speaking uncomfortable truths, and she's already been absolutely vilified by the mainstream sports media just for defending women's sports and advocating for basic fairness.
Thursday night, Indiana Fever and Atlanta Dream played. Indiana Fever is where Caitlin Clark plays. Atlanta Dream is where Brittany Griner plays. Now you tell me what it looks like Brittany Griner is saying here. For a little bit of context, this was in the fourth quarter after Brittany Griner fouled out against Caitlin Clark and Indiana Fever would go on to win by 5. Now I'm gonna tell you what I think she said. Let's play it back. Looks to me like she is saying trash and then calling Caitlin Clark a bleep white girl. Just a reminder, this is who Joe Biden traded for the Russian merchant of death. So many WNBA players hate Caitlin Clark so much when she is the best thing that could have happened to the league. And she's not the best thing that happened to the league because she's white. It's because she's a good player. It's because she's the best player. Now, imagine if Caitlin Clark said the inverse of this. It would be reprehensible, condemned, and understandably so. You've got all of these individual players. You have sports commentators, people like Ryan Clark, who constantly tout of the racial tensions that exist in the league, when in reality, They are the ones perpetuating and amplifying these racial tensions with their anti-white hatred for Caitlin Clark.
The moment Gaines witnessed the WNBA openly shielding certain players while simultaneously throwing others, like Caitlin Clark, directly under the bus, she instantly recognized the deeply ingrained pattern. Her timing couldn't have been more perfect. This intervention landed right after the WNBA had wasted valuable time and resources investigating utterly baseless claims against Caitlin Clark fans, all while conveniently sweeping actual video-documented controversies under the rug. You truly cannot overstate the sheer brilliance of Gaines' response. She hit social media and absolutely obliterated Grenier with surgical precision, but she didn't just point out the obvious comments. She shrewdly reminded everyone of the broader context that makes this entire situation outrageously absurd. Let's not forget, the United States government literally traded a notorious, dangerous arms dealer to bring Grenier home from Russia, and this is how she chooses to repay that immense sacrifice. We're talking about Victor Bout, a man literally dubbed the Merchant of Death for his role in fueling conflicts worldwide, and the US swapped him for Brittany Griner. The sheer audacity that someone who benefited from that level of international support would then turn around and trash another American athlete is frankly stunning. Gaines' follow-up point, asking us to imagine if the roles were reversed, is utterly devastating. Seriously, can you even fathom the outrage if Caitlin Clark had been caught on video spewing similar comments about Brittany Griner? The media would be demanding her head on a platter. Sponsors would be bailing faster than you can blink. The WNBA would probably hand her an indefinite suspension. But since it's Griner dishing out the comments and Clark on the receiving end, suddenly everyone wants to play the "we can't really tell what she said" game. The double standard is so blatant, so laughably obvious, that even people who barely follow basketball are starting to take notice. What's truly genius about Gaines' strategy is how she masterfully connected this single incident to the much larger systemic issues plaguing the WNBA. She's not just taking a pot shot at one player or one moment, she's ripping the lid off an entire organizational culture that prioritizes safeguarding specific narratives over upholding basic fairness and accountability.
Insert what Griner says, there is one way to find out. Ask Brittany Griner. However, no one has done that except for Outkick. It's been over 2 weeks since Griner said this. Instead, the WNBA was investigating a bogus race hoax made up by Angel Reese about Indiana Fever fans. And I say bogus because they found no evidence that supports Angel Reese's claims. So we at Outkick applied for media credentials to cover Brittany Griner's team, the Atlanta Dreams, game on June 6th, to which, shocker, they denied us. We've never had trouble getting media credentials with any professional sports league in the past, but wouldn't you know, now they suddenly have very limited space, which is total baloney. They just want to suppress any sort of uncomfortable inquiries from media. Regardless, we at Outkick are going to keep asking the tough questions, the questions that people want the answer to. And if you do call yourself a reporter or a journalist from an outlet like ESPN or any other sports outlet for that matter, and you have access to these settings and you're not asking those questions, you're really no reporter or journalist at all. At least not one with...
When the sharp-nosed media outlet Outkick attempted to secure media credentials specifically to question Griner directly about her comments, the WNBA flat out denied their request. And that, my friends, is when Riley Gaines truly let them have it. She brilliantly exposed the fact that aside from Outkick, literally no one else had actually bothered to try and get answers straight from Griner herself. Everyone else in the mainstream sports media seemed perfectly content to just speculate and churn out endless excuses, but the moment someone genuinely tried to get to the truth, the WNBA slammed the door shut. The sheer fact that Outkick was blocked from getting media credentials for daring to ask legitimate questions about this incident is an utterly damning indictment of the WNBA's credibility. This is, supposedly, a professional sports league that absolutely relies on media coverage and fan engagement. Yet when actual journalists attempt to do their jobs and ask the most basic necessary questions, the league actively shuts them down. Gaines spotlighted this hypocrisy with absolute precision, noting that the WNBA will eagerly launch full-blown investigations into phantom claims against Caitlin Clark fans, claims that invariably turn out to be completely false. They'll issue grand statements, initiate inquiries, and make a huge show of taking unsubstantiated allegations seriously. But when there's actual, undeniable video evidence of one of their own players potentially making inflammatory comments about their biggest star, suddenly they're too busy to investigate. Later, speaking directly to Fox News, Gaines obliterated the WNBA's credibility with one devastating iconic quote, "I've never seen an organization more committed to self-sabotage than the WNBA." She then proceeded to dissect exactly why the league's behavior isn't just hypocritical, but actively damaging to its own future.
Good morning, Brittany. I'm Bill Roden from ESPN Landscape. It was really great to see you. It was good to know the prayers have been answered. The question, you've always represented so much throughout your entire career about access and, being able to do stuff. And I hate to put one more thing on your plate, but there are a number of states who are aggressively moving to prevent transgender athletes playing. And I was wondering, again, I hate to put one more thing on your plate, but in terms of on your radar, where is that? You're going to have a tremendous platform, but where is that going to be on your radar in terms of advocating for, athletes, all athletes, transgender athletes, to be able to play?
Oh, I mean, that ranks high on the list of things that I'll be fighting for and speaking up against. Everyone deserves the right to play. Everyone deserves the right to come here, sit in these seats, and feel safe and not feel like there's a threat or they can't be who they are, or like it's just all eyes on them. I think it's a crime, honestly, to separate someone for any reason. So I definitely will be speaking up against that legislation and those laws that are trying to be passed, for sure.
The precise timing of Gaines's intervention was, in a word, perfect. This all unfolded immediately after the WNBA had just poured precious time and resources into investigating completely fabricated claims against Caitlin Clark's fans. So, let's be clear, we're looking at a league that will eagerly mobilize its entire apparatus to investigate fake controversies, yet flat out refuses to address real ones, especially when they're caught crystal clear on video. What made it even more cringeworthy for the WNBA was how Gaines brilliantly called out ESPN's Jameel Hill for attempting to run interference and provide cover for Griner. Hill apparently tried to claim that Griner didn't say what everyone thought she said, but rather mumbled something else entirely. But as Gaines wisely countered, you can just watch it and make up your own mind as to what Brittany Griner appears to be saying. That, my friends, is the absolute perfect mic drop response to these blatant attempts at gaslighting. Don't let anyone tell people what they're seeing and hearing. Empower them to watch the video for themselves and draw their own conclusions. The very fact that prominent media figures are desperately trying to reinterpret obvious audio and visual evidence just screams how utterly desperate they are to protect certain pre-approved narratives. What makes this entire fiasco even more eye-rolling is how absurdly simple it would be for the WNBA to handle this with integrity. All they'd need to do is apply the same standards to everyone. If they're going to investigate unsubstantiated claims against fans, then they absolutely should investigate substantiated claims against players. If they're going to grant media access for certain stories, then they should grant it for all legitimate journalistic inquiries. But instead of choosing that straightforward, honest path, they've engineered a situation where their hypocrisy is now shining brighter than a supernova for the entire world to witness. And Riley Gaines? She didn't just turn up the spotlight, she cranked it to maximum, making sure no one could possibly miss it.
A lot of people are talking about the Olympics, but not for the right reasons. So let me shed some light into a story that not too many people are talking about. I'm sure a majority of you know who Riley Gaines is and who is Brittany Griner. So Riley Gaines laid into Brittany Griner for kneeling during the national anthem. You don't have to sing or anything, but you need to show some respect for the country that saved you from a Russian gulag. True. If y'all forgot, Brittany Griner was a 32-year-old that was arrested in Moscow on February 17, accused of entering Russia with a vape cartridge containing cannabis oil, which is illegal in Russia. She was sentenced to 9 years in Russian labor. Obviously, this was a whole political thing. This was immediately after Russia invaded Ukraine. However, America fought for her and got her back in a one-on-one exchange with another prisoner, but that prisoner is one of the biggest arms dealers ever, Victor Bout. So you bring something illegal to a country, that country arrests you, and then America does everything to try and get you back here just for you to kneel during the national anthem?
The broader context of this entire controversy is precisely what makes Gaines' intervention so critically important. Let's be real, Caitlin Clark has been the single greatest thing to happen to the WNBA in decades. She's pulled in millions of fresh eyes, packed arenas nationwide, and generated more buzz and positive attention for women's basketball than any player in history. Yet, instead of protecting and celebrating their undeniable superstar, the league seems far more preoccupied with appeasing players who clearly resent her success. They're perfectly willing to launch investigations into fake controversies that might make Clark look bad, while actively ignoring real controversies that actually make other players look terrible. This backward, self-destructive approach is exactly what Riley Gaines is tearing apart. She's exposing the fact that the WNBA is seemingly committed to shooting itself in the foot because they are, quite literally, working against their own best interests. They've got a generational talent who could propel the league to unprecedented heights, but their focus is tragically misplaced on coddling the delicate feelings of players who simply cannot handle Clark's meteoric rise. Gaines also understands something the WNBA appears to have completely forgotten. Fans are not going to endlessly tolerate such blatant unfairness. The massive new audiences Caitlin Clark has drawn into women's basketball aren't going to stick around if they feel like their favorite player is being actively screwed over by the very league she plays for. As a swimmer, Gaines brings a unique, invaluable perspective to these issues. She's witnessed firsthand how sports organizations can utterly betray their own athletes, all in the name of political correctness or blindly protecting a narrative. She knows what it's like to be brutally thrown under the bus for daring to stand up for basic fundamental fairness. So when she observes the WNBA engaging in identical behavior toward Caitlin Clark, she instantly recognizes the pattern, and she is absolutely not afraid to call it out. That's precisely what unfolds here, and the league's shambolic response has only cemented her original point. The stunning denial of media credentials to Outkick is particularly damning because it starkly reveals the WNBA's pathetic strategy for dealing with uncomfortable questions. Instead of tackling issues head-on with transparency, they simply try to silence anyone who dares to ask. It's a short-sighted strategy that might buy them a moment of peace, but it is guaranteed to backfire spectacularly in the long run. Riley Gaines has just turbocharged that timeline by dragging the WNBA's selective enforcement and flagrant media manipulation into the national spotlight. Now, thanks to her, everyone knows that the league actively blocked access to journalists who simply wanted to ask legitimate questions about a major controversial incident involving one of their players. Perhaps the most devastating blow from Gaines' criticism is how she brilliantly framed the WNBA as an organization dead set on self-sabotage. That's not just a clever insult, it's an uncannily accurate description of the dumpster fire we're all witnessing. This league has been handed a golden ticket with Caitlin Clark's soaring popularity, yet they are unforgivably squandering it by manufacturing totally unnecessary controversies and brazenly displaying obvious favoritism. What makes Gaines' approach so incredibly effective is how she skillfully linked this one specific incident to broader, deeply disturbing patterns of behavior within the league. She's not just whining about a single video or one denied media credential, she's pulling back the curtain on a systematic, corrosive problem with how the WNBA operates at its core. The very fact that Gaines, a swimmer with no direct stake in basketball politics, felt compelled to dive into this drama speaks volumes about just how utterly egregious and undeniable the WNBA's behavior has become. She's an outspoken advocate for fairness in sports generally, but when she sees an organization engaging in the same brand of selective enforcement and narrative protection that she's battled in her own sport, she simply won't stay silent. And thank goodness for that, because you can bet your bottom dollar the mainstream sports media wasn't going to hold the WNBA accountable. The video evidence of Gaines' comments speaks for itself, but it's the league's pathetic response to that evidence that truly exposes their twisted priorities. They could have addressed the situation with transparency, investigated it fairly, and simply moved on. Instead, they chose to circle the wagons, double down, and protect a narrative that doesn't even make a shred of sense. Riley Gaines just beamed a blinding spotlight onto that spectacular failure of leadership, and now the entire sports world is holding its breath, watching to see how the WNBA will squirm. They have a choice: either learn from this scathing criticism and finally start applying consistent standards to everyone, or they can double down on their blatant hypocrisy and definitively prove Gaines' point about being committed to self-destruction. based on their abysmal track record so far, the smart money is absolutely on them choosing the latter. But at least now, thanks to the courage of Riley Gaines, everyone will know exactly what they're doing and precisely why it's so fundamentally wrong. The most glaring aspect of this entire messy controversy is how it mercilessly highlights the WNBA's completely misplaced priorities. Instead of strategically capitalizing on the unprecedented popularity that Caitlin Clark has single-handedly brought to their sport, they are bizarrely more concerned with protecting players who seem genuinely determined to undermine that very success. Clark is only in her second professional year, and she has already undeniably transformed the entire landscape of women's basketball. Yet, rather than embracing this revolutionary transformation, certain elements within the league appear to deeply resent it, and the WNBA's leadership seems far more interested in delicately managing those petty resentments than fiercely protecting their single most valuable asset. This, my friends, is exactly the type of organizational dysfunction that Riley Gaines has become an absolute expert at identifying and fearlessly calling out. She's seen how institutions can become so utterly captured by specific rigid ideologies that they completely lose sight of their fundamental mission. In the case of the WNBA, that core mission should be crystal clear: promoting women's basketball and unequivocally supporting female athletes. But when the league investigates fake controversies while conveniently ignoring real ones, when they deny media access to journalists asking perfectly legitimate questions, and when they fail to address glaring misconduct by their own players, they are failing in that sacred mission with spectacular public disgrace. The sheer brilliance of Gaines' intervention is that she's forced everyone, fans, media, players, and leadership alike, to confront these glaring contradictions head on. She's made it utterly impossible for the WNBA to pretend that their selective enforcement and glaring double standards are anything other than what they truly are: a shocking betrayal of the very principles they claim to uphold. The league now stands at a crucial crossroads. They can choose to finally acknowledge these deeply rooted problems and genuinely work to fix them, or they can stubbornly continue down the treacherous path of organizational self-destruction that Gaines has so precisely identified. Given their response thus far, it seems painfully clear which disastrous direction they're currently heading, but thanks to the unflinching Riley Gaines, that monumental choice is now being made in full, unapologetic public view. This former Olympic swimmer has ensured that the WNBA's rampant hypocrisy can no longer be hidden or conveniently explained away. She's delivered a much-needed reality check that the league was absolutely desperate for, even if they're currently too stubborn, proud, or ideologically blind to accept it. The broader implications of this controversy reverberate far beyond the confines of basketball. It serves as a perfect, chilling example of how institutional capture can warp organizations into actively working against their own foundational interests. The WNBA holds a literal once-in-a-generation opportunity with Caitlin Clark's unprecedented popularity, but they are unforgivably squandering it just to appease internal factions who seem far more interested in divisive ideology than collective success. Riley Gaines has witnessed this exact destructive pattern unfold before in her own sport, and she is simply not going to stand idly by and watch it happen again without speaking up. Her sheer courage in calling out this systemic dysfunction is precisely what this volatile situation demanded, and her undeniable moral authority on these complex issues makes her scathing criticism utterly impossible to dismiss. The undeniable fact that the WNBA actively attempted to suppress questions about the Griner incident only makes Gaines' point exponentially stronger. When organizations begin attempting to control information and severely limit accountability, it's almost always because they inherently know they cannot possibly defend their actions on their own merits. Gaines has forced them to confront that ugly reality, and their pathetic response has only further confirmed her original piercing assessment. The WNBA truly does appear to be committed to self-sabotage, and Riley Gaines just made sure absolutely everyone can see it unfolding in real time. Riley Gaines just delivered the no-holds-barred reality check that the WNBA desperately needed. Her fearless, unvarnished call-out of Brittany Griner and the league's undeniable double standards has ripped open and exposed the deep-seated corruption everyone could see plain as day, but nobody dared to address. So what's your take on this explosive ongoing situation? Let me know down in the comments below. And hey, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more truth bombs dropping right here.